Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the BMD-4M. This is a currently 9.3 BR rank 6 premium light tank in the Russian Ground Forces tech tree. The pack that it comes in currently costs $59.99 USD when not on sale, and comes with 2,000 Golden Eagles and 15 days of premium time. With that said, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this light tank, including its stats, how it plays, I'll go over its strengths and weaknesses, I'll give it some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation on if I feel that this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. With that said, if you don't mind, please consider liking this video, but without further ado, let's get into the review. Now to start, I'll place a stat card here on the side of the screen. Important things to note are its mobility, its armor thickness, and its turret traverse rate. Now for how it plays. In short, the BMD-4M is a fast, well-armed, and mostly poorly armored light tank that can shred the flanks of enemies. This vehicle excels in flanking, scouting, base capping, supporting, and even sniping, as you have excellent Gen 3 thermals and 12 times zoom with your gunner's optics, as well as an extremely powerful 9M117M1 tandem charged ATGM, which can pretty much destroy any enemy tank in a single hit from the front, even in up tiers. Because of the excellent 33:1 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio, the BMD-4M is able to absolutely blaze around the map, and because it's tracked and not wheeled, it isn't slowed down too much by poor terrain. This allows the ability to simultaneously scout and flank, as the mobility, when combined with its 60 degree per second turret traverse rate and decent enough APDS shells, will get you into advantageous positions, hitting the sides or rears of enemy tanks, destroying them easily. Still, as this is a light tank, it can hardly take any hits without dying. Though it does have additional armor that you can either keep or detach, it isn't enough to stop anything larger than your typical HMGs. Because of this, if you are hit, the BMD-4M is likely to die in a single hit. Even still, this sort of thing is expected for light tanks, as they typically have poor survivability. The BMD-4M, however, is still faster and better armed than most of those light tanks, which in turn somewhat helps with not being hit in the first place. Regardless, the 4M is a fantastic flanker, scouter, base capper, sniper, and even support. Insofar as sniping is concerned, it works out very well so long as you have enough ATGMs. Once you run out of the 4M max that you can carry, you likely can no longer snipe, as the 30mm autocannon simply lacks the range and armor pen to perform that role effectively. Otherwise, make full use of your speed, stay out of sight of the enemy, and you'll have a field day with the BMD-4M. Now with that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses, and first for its strengths. This vehicle has an extremely powerful 9M117M1 tandem charge ATGM that can destroy enemies from the front that your autocannon typically can't handle. Second, this vehicle features a hydropneumatic suspension that allows you to raise and lower the hull, which can assist when it comes to mobility, and also hiding yourself. Third, this vehicle has an IRST auto tracking that helps to destroy aircraft. Fourth, you have Gen 3 thermals for the gunner. For its fifth strength, this vehicle features a commander's optic. Sixth, it has excellent mobility. Even with the additional armor, it still has over a 33:1 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio, just as good as its 70 km/h top speed, which is high for this BR. Seventh, though not amazing in terms of armor pen, the 30mm autocannon features decent enough armor pen at 82mm at max, but more importantly has a good 330 round per minute rate of fire. For its 8th strength, this vehicle has excellent gunner's optics with up to 12 times zoom. Even better are the commander's optics, which have up to 20 times zoom, even though these do unfortunately lack thermals. 9th, this vehicle has a fantastic turret traverse rate of between 42 and 60 degrees per second, depending on crew skill. For its 10th strength, it features both smoke grenades and ESS. 11th, this vehicle has a low vehicle profile, which makes it slightly more difficult to spot and also to hit. For its 12th strength, the BMD-4M has excellent auto-loading reload speeds for both the 30mm autocannon and 100mm cannon, with 1.3 seconds for the autocannon and 5 seconds for the 100mm. And finally, this vehicle features premium RP and SL bonuses. Now for its weaknesses. Even though the additional armor does provide noticeable benefits when facing HMGs, that's about all it can protect against. Otherwise, the BMD-4M is still very poorly armored. As a side note to this point, the 4M is basically a win-win over the standard BMD-4, barring a future BR increase of the 4M. You can take the extra armor and be largely immune to HMGs while practically having the same mobility, or you can remove the extra armor and be as survivable as a standard BMD-4 while also being slightly more mobile. Personally, I always take the extra armor as the mobility is excellent even with the additional weight, but that's just me. Now for its second weakness, this vehicle has poor cannon depression of just just -6 degrees. Third, you can only carry up to 4 9M117M1 ATGMs, with the rest of the 100mm cannon projectiles being HE shells with very low muzzle velocity, making it difficult to use them beyond targets that are at very close range. For its fourth weakness, being that this is a traditional Russian autoloader setup, the ammo rack is absolutely huge and sits underneath the turret, meaning that shots that hit it will oftentimes result in ammo rack detonations and, of course, crew death. For its fifth weakness, this vehicle does not have a ton of ammunition, with only 464 rounds in total being available for the 30mm autocannon, with only up to 250 of those being for the APDS belt. For its sixth weakness, this vehicle only has 6 smoke grenades. While it's not absolutely awful for this BR, the BMD-4M is still a light tank, which typically have more smoke grenades than that. And finally, while not necessarily bad at this BR, especially considering the fire rate, the APDS shells only have about 82mm of armor pen at max. Now with all that said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. First, for armament, I give it an 8.75 out of 10. Simply put, the armament on the BMD-4M is fantastic. It has a largely great 30mm autocannon, excellent 100mm ATGM/HE launcher, IRST auto tracking for destroying aircraft, Gen 3 thermals for the gunner, phenomenal gunner and commander sights, excellent cannon elevation, excellent reload rates for both cannons, and an amazing turret traverse rate to boot. While the APDS only pens a decent amount at just 82mm at very most, that is still more than enough to annihilate light tanks and easily destroy main battle tanks from the side and the rear. The ATGM is more than enough to destroy enemies at a range and those that cannot be killed easily by the 30mm autocannon. If the APDS rounds can just pen slightly more, and if you could carry just a few more ATGMs, the BMD-4M would easily be over a 9 out of 10 in this category. Still, this is easily among the best armed light tanks at this BR and is incredibly versatile in terms of its firepower. Now for mobility, I give it a 9 out of 10, featuring a crazy good power to weight ratio of over 33 horsepower per ton and a 70 km/h top speed. The BMD-4M has easily among the best levels of mobility in War Thunder at this BR, or even in general. If you remove the additional armor modification, the power to weight ratio is about 7% better, which is even crazier. Even with the armor, which I strongly prefer to use, the BMD-4M has incredible mobility, especially for a tracked vehicle, which means that it can traverse off-road with ease. Additionally, the hydropneumatic suspension allows for it to deal with being off-road with ease if you raise your suspension. Basically, the mobility on the BMD-4M is phenomenal, especially for a tracked vehicle. The only thing that somewhat takes away from the mobility and why it isn't a 9.25 or even higher out of 10 is that the 4M only has a 20.4 km/h reverse speed. It isn't bad, but it isn't really quick for a vehicle of this type either. Now for survivability, I give it a 2.75 out of 10. The survivability on the BMD-4M is fairly poor, but it's also largely immune to HMGs, which is not all too common for such light vehicles. Most wheeled light tanks and small tracked light tanks are easily killed by such weapons, so the 4M has at least that going for it. Otherwise, it still has only a 3-man crew, a relatively cramped crew area that is also full of ammunition, the remainder of the tank being decently packed with important modules, and it only has 6 smoke grenades. Part of me wants to give the 4M at least a 3 out of 10 in this category, but outside of the additional armor, there isn't really much going for it. Aside from HMGs, the 4M can still be penned by pretty much anything in-game. Heck, strafing runs are still a huge concern and will easily tear this vehicle apart. It's better than the standard BMD-4 to be sure, but the survivability of the 4M is still poor. Now overall, I give it a 7.75 out of 10. Being that this is a light tank, I'm weighing my survivability score a bit less than the armament and mobility, which is why this score is a bit higher than the combined scores average. With that said, the BMD-4M is phenomenal. It can pretty much do whatever you need it to do outside of taking hits reliably. It's even better than the standard BMD-4, which itself was already amazing, as the 4M has better armor and mobility. Heck, even if this vehicle sees a BR increase to 9.7, it will still likely be at least a 7.25 out of 10 overall, and possibly even a 7.5 out of 10, again at least in my opinion. The 4M is incredibly up-tierable, extremely versatile, and monstrously mobile. It's about as good as you can get for a light tank at this BR. Now with all that said, do I recommend the purchase of the BMD BMD-4M. Yes, I do. While the lack of armor might make this a challenging vehicle for new players and people who lack top-tier light tank experience, the overall BMD-4M package is top-notch. It has an incredibly potent armament, fantastic mobility at this BR, and can even survive HMG hits, which isn't always a given for light tanks, at least if you have the extra armor attached. Barring a BR increase, which is certainly possible even without further BR decompression, the BMD-4M is easily among the best light tanks at its BR, especially for aggressive gameplay. Its fantastic mobility and awesome armament make this into an aggressive player's dream vehicle. So yes, I do recommend the BMD-4M for purchase and give it my Tankenstein seal of approval. I knew I'd like the 4M as I owned the BMD-4 since it was given as an event vehicle years ago, but the 4M is somehow still even better than that, even without taking anything away. Normally there's some give and take with this sort of thing, such as adding more armor and you lose some mobility, but with the BMD-4M, you gain both armor and mobility, which is almost unheard of. But yes, the BMD-4M rules. Definitely consider it if you have the funds, especially if a sale is around the corner, though I would slightly recommend the 2S38 over the BMD-4M, simply because the 2S38 is a higher rank, and thus will be able to research more of the Russian ground tech tree without penalty. Now with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel, as those both help me tremendously. Also, consider commenting on my review and on the BMD-4M itself, as I always like to know what you guys are thinking about these videos and again, the vehicles. Either way though, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care everyone.